welcome to In the Scenes. Before I turn it over to Asher and Jamie, here are some updates on what's happening in the film industry. This weekend is the premiere of both Wicked and Gladiator 2. Both films are poised for success, with Wicked tracking at a $100 million debut and Gladiator 2 at a $65 million debut. The release of the films are also expected to shake up the Oscar race, with some early viewers predicting Ariana Grande and Denzel Washington entering the conversation for acting nominations. Speaking of awards, the Governor's Awards were given out on November 17th. These are non-competitive awards that the Academy presents to honor lifetime achievements in the industry. This year, filmmaker Richard Curtis was given the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award. Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, producers of the James Bond movies, were given the Irvin G. Thalberg Memorial Award, and casting director Juliet Taylor and the late musician Quincy Jones were given the Academy Honorary Award. Looking ahead, there have been some exciting announcements of upcoming movies. Edward Berger, director of this year's Conclave, and actor Austin Butler are shopping around a film titled The Barrier. Based on a short story by Macmillan Hedges, the film is described as a time travel story, Interstellar meets Top Gun. Filmmaker Jesse Eisenberg has set up a new movie starring Julianne Moore and Paul Giamatti. The film is a musical comedy about a woman who joins a community theater production. And Samuel L. Jackson is in talks to join the new J.J. Abrams movie. Plot details are being kept under wraps, but Glenn Powell, Jenna Ortega, and Emma Mackey are already attached. Looks like we've got lots to look forward to. That's all I've got for today. Stick around for Asher Thompson and Jamie Bass's conversation on film scores.
Thanks, Fiona. I'm Asher.
And I'm Jamie.
And this is In the Scenes,
a show where we break down aspects of filmmaking through the films that we love. Let's get started. Asher, how you doing today?
Yeah, man, I'm not too bad. How are you?
Oh, you know.
What do you mean by that?
I'm good. What are you talking about?
Oh.
What?
I don't know.
You okay?
It just seemed like you were really, really sinister for a second.
Well, that's just one way music can help alter the tone of a scene.
What are we talking about today, Jamie?
We're talking about the soundtrack, of course.
Oh! Tell me about the soundtrack.
What do you mean? What do you want to hear about the soundtrack?
Well, what were you just talking about? The soundtrack helps define the tone of the scene?
Well, yeah, something like that. Soundtracks are important to films because, you know, the soundscape, you know, film is a visual medium, but the soundscape is quite important. Mm-hmm. You know, ever since in the 30s or whatever, the 20s, I can't remember, I don't know time. But when they figured out how to do sound, things got a lot better.
1927.
Okay, Johnny Homework.
I think that's jazz singer.
I think I think that is correct. But the soundtrack is very important because even before sync sound was made for films had soundtracks. I mean, people would go to the cinema and they would play. There would be a live band in the pit and they would play the score alongside the film. So they've been part of movies since before like sound was introduced as a thing. So
I've heard that music's been around since even before movies.
That's true.
Huh.
That's a true fact that not many people know, that music has been around for years and years and years and years. And I think a soundtrack can really help a film because in the same way that a soundtrack can really hurt the film. Like, you know, you ever watch a movie and like the music is too overbearing or too not matching the tone of the film that you're watching at the moment?
Yeah.
And then it could be the opposite where an innocuous sort of gesture or like a innocuous, I said gesture wrong, jester? Whatever.
I was like, if you're talking about an innocuous gesture, that's you.
Yeah, no, that was mean.
I'm sorry.
Just anything like, you know, a guy sipping coffee sitting at his table can be changed if there's like lighthearted music or
heavy metal.
Heavy metal, like the energy of it, the energy of a shot of like one shot can be changed completely if you change the music. So I think it's a very important aspect of film. I don't know, what do you think is important when you're talking about soundtracks?
Yeah, I think like definitely helps to define the emotional understanding of a scene. Like you said, guy drinking his coffee, eating his cornflakes isn't going to be rocking out at 8 in the morning. But if you have sort of a light, airy, something to match the vibe, then everyone's sort of along for the ride. And in sort of a different tone, you can use music to sort of set the pace and set the stakes a little. where something like you find the treasure map, there's a swell in the music. John Williams is great at this.
Yeah.
He makes these triumphant themes to make you feel like you're doing something, and it's the same reason I wish that every time I opened like a chest or something and pulled something out of it, it would do a little da-da-da-da, because it just adds a little bit of spice and excitement to everything that's going on.
Yeah, it's very important. I also think it can be used as like a, music. Like we said, a guy drinking coffee, eating cornflakes with like, heavy music playing over it is like, that's an interesting combo, because it can be like, you could see it and be like, oh, that's not how the scene looks, so it's automatically bad. But I think there's a way where like the lack of compliment can say something else. Like, having uncomplimentary music towards like a scene, it can say something in and of itself.
You can break the rules creatively, and I
Yeah.
think that's true for most rules in filmmaking.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think the soundtrack is very important, and movies have very good scores.
I'll say that.
Now, Asher, why don't we get into today's film?
Let's. Today, we're going to be talking about Challengers. Challengers is a movie that asks the important question, like, does boys kissing make them better at sports?
It's the story of a love triangle between three tennis professionals, Tashi Duncan, Art Donaldson, and Patrick Zweig. What starts as two young men fighting for the attention of one extremely talented young woman ends up fueling a decade of deceit and betrayal that culminates in the final ultimate tennis match.
I like this movie a
I
lot.
like this movie so much.
I saw this movie with Fiona, and then I immediately, same week, saw it with you in theaters.
Oh, it's such a good, especially like the experience of seeing this movie in a theater is
And such a
incredible.
good score,
Yeah.
especially in a theater.
Yeah,
'Cause-
absolutely, because we haven't gotten to what the score is yet, but just how loud it is in the theater, it really like emphasizes it. And when this movie came out back in April or whenever, it was just like, it took over my entire life for, I want to say like 2 months.
I think we were living together at the time, or near it?
We were like living together in like a faux sort of,
Yeah.
we weren't like,
I was,
it wasn't like we're on the
sleeping in
lease.
your roommate's bed.
Yeah, because
But-
he had to leave.
And that was sort of an awesome time to be listening to the Challengers score all the time.
Yeah.
But you talking about Challengers score, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
So yeah,
big fan.
I'm a huge fan of these guys. So this score was by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who some people may know from the band 9 Inch Nails, who's
Little
like
band called 9 Inch Nails.
punk, heavy metal type folks who got into the world of film scoring. And I want to say their big breakout score, I think they did a little bit of soundtrack work before this, but was in The Social Network, the David Fincher film from 2010, which immediately like it set their style that they've been coming back to for years and years and years, which is like this like very electronic, like techno sort of like not. They're ditching the like swelling orchestral stuff of like a John Williams or a Hans Zimmer, and they're going for like something that you can make in a computer, but it's very layered music. It's very like, it's good work music. It's good stuff to like do
And
your
I think
homework
especially
to.
for a movie like The Social Network, that was very like sort of new age techno. You can do it all on your computer, sort of really fit the bill, and then they've found a way to incorporate this to a lot of different other films. Like, I didn't get into Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross until Fiona introduced me to the Gone Girl soundtrack.
Yes.
And that soundtrack rocks too. And it's sort of like, sure, this can apply to Mark Zuckerberg, but it can also apply to like faking your own death and leaving your husband. Who knew?
Yeah, and it's like, it's not like they do the same thing every single time either. They're very versatile. Like, they've done scores for like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which is a very adult movie, but they've also done scores for Soul, the Pixar film from 2020,
God, they did that.
which
What a
is
good
a
score.
wonderful score. And then they did the score for Mank, which was another David Fincher film that's like old Hollywood, and they're kind of ditching the electronic stuff. So they've dipped their toe into a lot of different ponds, and I think
They play.
yeah, but I think in talking about Challengers, that long lead up building back up to this, this is very much them going back to the like heavy electronic. And when I say electronic, it's less social networky, and where like there would be like moments of like respite where the score gets like more tranquil. This is full techno music. This is being played in the clubs.
This is house.
This is house music. This has since been played in like nightclubs across the world. I think I've seen videos of this score of like people losing their minds to this score in like a club in Berlin or whatever. And it's like so, because it is like, and it's full like techno all the time with like, there's a little bit of, there are some slower tracks, but mostly
like
Le Ouf. Yeah, that's like one of the tracks where they're like going to the beach. But for the most part, I'd say 90% of the score is like these booming like bass like hits and like just really hard driving techno. And especially like we said, when we were in the theater, it's so loud. It's like you're in a rave, but you're watching this film about like this like sort of like melodrama, like tennis comedy thing. I don't know. It's a hard film to explain really, but I
think the music definitely seats you in a place where, and a lot of elements of the film do this as well, but the music really helps guide this idea that you're not watching this movie and being like, ooh, I want this boy to get the girl. I want this boy to get the girl. You watch it and you're in the theater and you're sitting there and you're just like pumping your fist saying like, let's play some good tennis.
Yeah, this is a movie that you bob your head to. Like, it's like even when like the most like emotionally distressing stuff is happening, because the interesting thing about how the score is utilized in this film is that they will play the like hardest instrumental like the Brutalizer. There's a track called Brutalizer in the score that plays over an argument scene between the Josh O'Connor character and the Zendaya character, and I remember like some people saying like, that what's going on with that, why you can like, and the score is definitely like up in the mix, and like the dialogue is like right here and the score is right here, so
it is loud. It is booming in the middle of a domestic dispute, and it's like, what is happening?
And you're missing words, you're like, it's giving this like small scale scene such a big like oomph, like it's got like there's like a real power to it, and it's an interesting way to like utilize the score, because I think these characters and their relationships are so rocky, like they're so like everything surrounding these guys is so messed up. How their love triangle works, trying to reclaim power over each other all the time, it really kind of puts you in the mind space of like these like messy characters in their heads. I think it really like, it puts you there, and you're just asked to like look at it and observe.
I think it puts you there like sort of off the bat, where the movie's told in a very complicated sort of out of sequence timeline fashion, but sort of starting from the beginning chronologically, when we're first introduced to the relationship between Art Donaldson and Patrick Zweig, and they see Tashi Duncan for the first time. And we get a track called Yeah X10.
Yeah,
which if you're unfamiliar, the only lyrics in this song are yeah, 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 yeah.
It's so catchy. That's like that's above all, this score is just so catchy, and I've played it like so many times. At the end of the year, my like Spotify Wrapped or whatever is going to be just fully this score, I think. And I think it's that, but it's also, I think, the way that it's used in the film, like I was saying with that scene, but also like, when they see Tashi Duncan for the first time, and they're like, there's the wonderful shot where everyone in the crowd is looking back and forth, like you see in tennis matches, but their gaze is like fixed on her as she's like doing her thing. And it adds a sort of like, it adds a weight to their gaze, I think, and it adds like to the sensuality that this movie is. This is a very steamy movie. I mean, apart from the sauna scene, which is near the end,
that is another indoor conversation between two characters,
And it kicks back
that gets
in.
epically overpowered with this like hard dance track.
The same dance track
It's
as
Brutalizer,
Reprise. Yeah,
Reprise.
it's like Brutalizer 2, I think.
Brutalizer 2.
And that gets to another thing that I really love about how the music is used in this movie. I think a lot of people can see techno and be like, or hear techno and be like, this all kind of sounds the same. But I think what Reznor and Ross are doing is all of the music kind of sounds like it could flow into each other like nicely, but if you really like listen to the score during the scenes with like Patrick or Tashi, or Tashi or Art and Patrick, the music sounds different, and it's also played to accentuate those people and those relationships through the leitmotifs, which for people who don't know, leitmotifs in score or music is when like, you know, a villain has like the villain theme, and the hero has the hero theme, and the hero theme can be reprised when like the hero is doing something heroically, and the opposite. Or if like a hero is going to like maybe become like the villain in the long run, maybe a bit of the villain's theme is put into the hero's theme.
Yeah,
and it's like,
this is what the John Williams and Danny Elfman sort of like really, really excel at.
Yeah, it's like a subliminal way to do characterization through the music. And I think there's a motif for all three, I think, like couples in this movie, which the three couples being Patrick and Tashi, Art and Tashi, and then Patrick and Art. Yeah, and it's not something I can like really explain right now, because you need to hear the music, but they all sound, every time, you know, there will be, because like I said, Brutalizer plays in that first scene with Tashi and Patrick, but then it comes back during a scene with Patrick and Art. So it's sort of like, it's you've heard this song before in a domestic dispute, and now it's these like old friends that are coming to blows in this sauna, and you're like, there's a bit more to this than like friendship. You know, it gives it a more like a deep-seated, like, you kind of like, there's more to these characters than meets the eye and their relationships.
Yeah, and taking the sort of motif between Art and Patrick to that place of Brutalizer is such a departure from the lighter tracks that play between the two of them, like X10 and the scene with a track called The Signal, which is very lighthearted and very, like, it's punchy, it's upbeat, and we're having a great time, and we're the best of friends, and like we're still planting those seeds that later become the harder hitting sounds in this, as it sort of takes itself to that like mean psychosexual place in the score later on.
Yeah, and I think the music, you know, there are different themes for like different couples, like I said, but I think the music itself is also just emblematic of these characters. Like the Patrick character is like sly and cunning and a little like anarchic, I would say. Like he's kind of just, he's really messy, but he's like, you can tell that he's kind of into it. He's a really intense person, I'd say, the Josh O'Connor character. And given that, you know, Brutalizer is a song that is probably highest BPM on the track list. It's like going and going and going and going. It plays again in that car scene near the end where they're driving away as sort of reprise to just like how intense this guy is.
Chaotic it is.
And you know, by the same token, Art, the Mike Feist character, is is a gentler guy, I would say. He's more docile, I would say. And the scenes with him and Tashi are scored with this more muted score that's like, it's a little slower, but it's a little like, it's kind of knowing that, and this is just getting into personal feelings about the score, but I hear that music and I feel like it's slower and it's more like accentuating this like couple, but it's also like, it has a vibe to where it's like, this relationship is like kind of on the rocks. It's kind of about to shatter
Yeah.
in a way.
And I think it's very emblematic of their personalities and their relationships, where Tashi and Art do end up getting together and have this in their relationship. It works on paper. Does it work for them really? And
Yes.
they sort of toss around that question a lot, and the music likes to play in that space too.
A lot of the film is about keeping up appearances and like, you know, this couple being like, because by the time that Art and Tashi are a couple, they are like renowned in like the tennis like verse. Art is like, you know, he's won a US Open, I think.
I think he's won all the Opens except the U.S.
Except, yeah, so he's a big deal.
He's won Australian, he's won French.
I think it's sort of something that this film says that I really love is that like it's really digging into these celebrities as like who they are as people beyond the like accolades and beyond the iconography that people may see, because you see like there's like constant shots where like you'll see like brand deals. There are a lot of brand deals in this movie, which can be...
There's a lot of Mike Feist on tennis rackets.
Yeah, he exists in the film as sort of like an advertisement. Mm-hmm. And in himself, in like the performance is kind of also like an advertisement for like, I'm good, this is a great like functioning relationship, when really I think the music that plays, like especially during like the first scene where we truly see Tashi and Art like together in the future.
Yeah.
It's like that's when like he says I love you and she's like I know, and that track is the track is called I Know, and it's like it's that same sort of like kind of like slower, a bit more emotional, but like
it
also
is sort of saddened by its own mediocrity in a way. Which is a weird sentence to say.
No,
but
I completely agree. It's kind of like drones instead of it like stabbing you, sort of like Brutalizer does, like with Patrick and Tashi's scenes. Art and Tashi's scenes have more of a low drone, which
it sort of colors their relationship as a little passionless.
Yeah, it's a little passionless, and it's also a little like foreboding, to where like you can understand why later on in the film Tashi would sort of push Art to the side and in favor of the more intense, the more like passionate Patrick. Mm-hmm. And you hear that all through the music.
Yeah, because throughout the movie we immediately understand that both these guys are in love with Tashi, and the way Art goes about getting her is not in a very like passionate way at all. He's never doing some grand gesture and saying like, Tashi, I love you, don't go be with him, be with me. He's always like, I don't even know if she likes you like that. I don't know if she's really thinking about this as a relationship. And then he'll run behind Patrick's back and be like, he's sleeping with other girls to Tashi, and he's sort of a slippery little snake.
Yeah, he's all these characters, the characters in this film are not like all perfect.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that I think the music also accentuates in how large and like chaotic and messy it can be. Mm-hmm. I think it's saying something about these characters, that they're like, these are all people who are fundamentally kind of broken, but they're all like, they're trying to work in that space.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, I don't know, it's
they
weird...
can't exist with each other, but they can't exist without each other.
Yeah,
and it's like
exactly.
What happens when...
They're all very codependent, I think.
Yes.
Like, codependency is a big, like, thing about these characters.
And I think that's the reason they, like, stay in each other's lives as long as they do.
Yeah. They can never... They're always... They might, like, hate each other at points, but they're all sort of attracted to each other in, like, in the, like... I'm attracted to you kind of way, but also kind of like just physically, they can't like stop, like, they can't stop like weaving in and out of each other's lives. Yeah.
Yeah, and with the score sort of does a similar thing, where by the end of it, a lot of the motifs you mentioned are like weaving in and out with one another, and then we get to the end of the movie and the end of the tennis match that we get to match point, and it sort of, the entire movie we've been taking all this baggage and building up the stakes of this one tennis match.
Yes.
And then it's quiet and all the chips are on the table. Everyone has so much to lose. And then the music kicks in with the sort of
Yeah.
And it's instantly this last 15 minutes of this movie, I was white knuckling my theater seat just because like the score was carrying this incredibly emotional moment, which is just two guys playing tennis.
Yeah.
But it gets elevated to this unreal, ethereal moment.
You know these characters and their relationships and what they've been through to get to this point, and when, you know, the match point, as in like, you know, point in time and also point in tennis, they get to this point and the emotions are already so high, and the film ends with this like absolute barn burner of a climax where like the music is so loud. It basically almost, if you like take out all of the grunts and the tennis ball hits, it almost plays as a silent film, you could say, with like just like this insane score playing in the background. It's most of the sound in the final like 10 minutes of this movie, I'd say.
Yeah.
And you ride that wave until the cut to black, and it's like
The music's going, the music stops, and the movie's over. And we instantly, it's like, what just happened? That was so cool. And then as everyone's like processing, what did we just sit through? All our emotions were so high.
Yeah.
Then they come in with compress repress during the credits.
Which is a track that is actually has words. It's not just like pure movie score, and it sort of leaves you on. I mean, there's no matching the like high of leaving this movie after the final scene.
Yeah.
But at the end, it's sort of like when compress repress hits in the end credits. I think it's just like a victory lap in a way. Like, it's like, we took you on this journey, now you're gonna like groove to this like awesome like dance song that is like so catchy. I've been singing it for months and months and months now.
Is it Atticus or Trent on the vocals?
Trent Reznor is on the vocals, saying compress, repress, repress, compress, then just surrender. And it's another song about like, that song in particular is about like just surrendering to like your passion.
Yeah.
And you know, for some characters in this movie that's tennis. For other characters that's other people. You know, I think Tashi is a very like passionate person about the sport. And
she's so competitive, it's terrifying.
And the other two are very passionate about Tashi.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just leaves you, it's this like,
neither of them would
song.
try this hard at tennis if they weren't in love with this extremely competitive woman.
Absolutely. It's this like banger of a song that is, that it's fun to listen to, but it also accentuates the themes of the movie you just watched. And I think that's what all the great end credits
It takes everything that
songs.
We just went through, and it's just like sitting along with us and being like, wasn't that such a good time?
Yeah.
Isn't this what it's all about? And it, like, the music from start to end walks hand in hand with you on this journey, and then you sort of groove out of the theater together, which is such a cool experience. And I have so many like other movies that leave me just sort of like, well, that happened, but this was just like, thanks for taking me here, challengers.
Yeah, and it's an important distinction, because like the lack of score and credits can really be like powerful.
Yeah.
There are films that we've seen recently where that kind of was really impactful.
Yeah.
But for this movie in particular, I think it ends at a point where all the characters are on this like cloud 9 level, and it's it doesn't really end in any sort of like bleak way. It's kind of a happy ending if you really like
You
look
could
into
read it
it.
as extremely hopeful, and I don't think we should spoil the ending because I think everyone should watch this incredible movie.
Yeah.
But it is incredibly, like, I don't think I've had a smile as big as I did leaving Challengers.
You leave the theater, or well, I guess you're home now since it's not in theaters anymore.
Since
but
it's on Prime Video.
Yeah, Prime Video. You leave your Prime Video application in your living room with a huge smile on your face, and you instantly, I think, the thing that I instantly did when I left this theater is download the score on my phone, and I played it in the car. We were in the car together. We played it in the car on the way back to my dorm, and it was...
I was in
just such
a musical last summer, and every day as I was warming up before a performance, I would listen to this soundtrack.
Yeah.
Just because it always got me there, and it's such a... And it's a score that got all of the characters to that place as well.
Yeah, and this might sound a little like a strange credulity, but I think when you listen to the tracks, to certain tracks in this, you can like hear, you have a better sense of like the characters in your mind, right? Like, I can't separate, Josh O'Connor as Patrick Zweig from Brutalizer when I'm listening to it while like cleaning my house, or I can't separate, the sort of like tragic, like hopelessness of Art and Tashi's relationship when I listen to I Know, and I can't shake the final point scene when I listen to Challenger's Match Point, which is the track that plays during that scene. And I think it's just such a beautiful way to like color your experience with a movie, and it's wonderful to listen to on its own, but it's also like with the film, I think it's like it's a big swing because like, this is a movie about tennis, it's a drama, it's like a little silly, but like why this techno music? But I think it works so well, and it works in a way where I can't really fully explain how it works until like unless you've seen the movie, and it's like, yeah, everyone who I've seen is like, the score was an absolute highlight. That
was all I could see online after
sometimes
the movie
it's
came
the
out.
first thing that someone says about it. Like, they walk out, they're listening to Compress Repress, like, leaves their ears slowly as they walk out the theater, and they're like, the score in that was incredible. It was the buzziest thing I heard about it coming from like early reactions, and yeah, it's just such a fantastic score.
Just an incredible score for an incredible movie.
Yeah, and like, what a time. What a time. That's all for this episode of In the Scenes. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. For SGTV, I'm Asher Thompson.
And I'm Jamie Bass. From all of us here at SGTV,
have a great night, Carolina.